Next topic today is Matthew Kadish's pick, which is 12 Monkeys, starring Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt. Why don't
you can guess which one mine was. You had Hot Tub Time Machine, Bill and Ted's, and 12 Monkeys.
12 Monkeys. Vastly different from the other two.
a lot more of a serious time travel movie.
So why don't you tell us why you picked this and then set the stage for it? What's this movie all about?
Well, I wanted to pick a time travel movie that wasn't kind of like, your standard time travel film. And I'm a big fan of Terry Gilliam, he was a former Monty Python troupe member. He was the guy who did all their animations, and he eventually kind of joined them as an actor. But he's also this very influential filmmaker. Like his stuff has kind of like shaped how certain filmmakers like do stuff. In fact, Bill and Ted, a big inspiration for Bill and Ted was Time Bandits, which was Terry Gilliam's like first like big movie. So like there were definitely like influences in other time travel films because of Terry Gilliam. And 12 Monkeys is a very kind of original time travel story. Basically, it's about a future, I believe it's like 2068 or something like that, or 2030, somewhere around there. And the world has been ravaged by this terrible disease, and it's forced everyone to kind of go underground and live in these like quarantined kind of bunkers.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah. And basically, like this virus wiped out almost the entire population of Earth. 5 billion people died off of it. And because they had to go underground, now the surface is kind of ruled by animals. And basically, a group of scientists are trying to find a non-mutated form of the disease in order to formulate some type of vaccine or cure for it. Because basically what happened was by the time they realized what the virus was, it had mutated beyond its original pure form, and there's no like pure enough strain to formulate some type of medication for it. So they decide that they're going to send volunteers back in time to try to find clues as to where the most pure specimen of this outbreak occurred.
Which was 1996 is when it first started, right?
Yeah. And so basically Bruce Willis, he's this prisoner in this like underground penitentiary, and they choose him as one of their volunteers to go back in time because he has very good memory. So his recall is good enough where they can give him instruction and it can survive the travel to the past and keep him all kind of on topic.
Yeah, because in this movie, time travel kind of takes its toll on the person who's traveling. It messes with your brain.
Yeah. So basically, Bruce Willis goes back in time, and he's got to kind of unravel the mystery of like what this disease was and how it started. And in addition to that, there's this kind of love, like quasi love story, and also this kind of circular, like kind of dream that he has where when he was a kid, he witnessed someone die in an airport, and he keeps having this recurring dream. It's the only dream he ever has of this moment. And throughout the movie, we realize that it's not a dream, it's a memory. And this film, it was actually based on a short film called La Jetée. It was a French short film from the early 1960s. And it was part of the French New Wave, which is basically a movement within cinema where a group of artists basically started rebelling against kind of established Hollywood norms. And they would do stuff like nonlinear storytelling and play around with film formats and stuff like that. And La Jetée was basically, it was a story about how you can't escape time. And it was all done in still frames. So it was done in like still photographs and constructed into a movie with narration.
What year did that come out?
It was like, I want to say 61 or 62, something like that.
Oh, wow, that's weird. I'm going to have to check that out.
It's a 20-minute short.
Sounds weird enough to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's French, so it's going to be weird.
That's the one thing I'll talk about the movie in a minute. Go ahead and keep going.
So anyway, this film was based off of that, and it's basically about this guy who survives World War III, and he gets sent back in time to try to, find out what happened to cause World War III. And when he was a kid, he saw someone die, And then when he goes back in time, he falls in love with this woman who's been in his dreams. And then he then he realizes that like he's the guy who he saw get killed, and he dies. And so like that, it's kind of like this weird circular time travel logic. And so if you look at 12 Monkeys, it's based off of this story, and they kind of made it like a little bit more detailed than the short film. But this is one of the few Terry Gilliam films where he didn't write the script, because he usually writes his own stuff. And but it's also like his kind of biggest, I'd say, Hollywood movie, because he had been kind of like an independent almost for most of his career up to this point. And it was kind of funny because when they cast the movie, so this was around the time where Bruce Willis's career was kind of resurging after Pulp Fiction, and he was trying to work with really big auteur directors, like kind of like Tarantino, you know. So he decided to work with Terry Gilliam, and the reason that they cast him was he was willing to waive his acting fee, to do the movie. And so like he got paid on the back end as opposed to getting paid up front, so that saved on the budget. But this was also Brad Pitt's kind of like big movie as well, because he got nominated for an Oscar for this film. But when they cast him, he hadn't blown up yet. So like Terry Gilliam was actually like, I'm not sure if I want this actor in this role. Like, but you know, he was convinced to cast Brad Pitt, and it was kind of funny because like by the time the movie was finished, Interview with a Vampire had come out, and like a bunch of other Brad Pitt movies, and he was like the biggest star in Hollywood. Yeah, he was like the biggest star in Hollywood, and that instantly like shot the value of the movie up by like $20 million or something like that. And so like they added Brad Pitt into all like the marketing materials and stuff like that. So they had like Bruce Willis and Brad Pitt, who at the time that this movie came out, which I believe was 97, these guys were like just huge stars. And so like it became this like kind of like big Hollywood movie, even though Terry Gilliam isn't known for being like a Hollywood guy. In fact, his movie with Universal before this, it was this very influential film called Brazil, and he had a terrible experience with Universal on that movie. But I find that this film is very interesting because it's the fixed timeline thing. It's a story about how like everything that happened already happened.
Yeah, it's all based on, because you did this, the consequences of that is this, and it's always been that. And
it's very interesting because Bruce Willis specifically states in the movie, he plays the character James Cole, where he's like, 5 billion people are dead. I can't save them. No one can. They're dead. It happened.
Yeah.
And so like the whole movie is just about the future trying to figure out what happened in the past. But the interesting thing about it is if you look at the events of the movie, everything that the future did caused the outbreak. Yeah. They were kind of like the architects of their own destruction. And it's a very deep movie when you start getting into the weeds with it, because like the more you analyze it, and the more you think about the time travel logic, the crazier it becomes. Yeah. And Gilliam, he's such an interesting director because he's one of these guys who has a very distinct visual style. He popularized the use of wide-angle lenses. Like he shoots most his entire movies in these wide angles, and he kind of used a special lens that it was new at the time.
It's a fisheye lens.
No, it's not a fisheye. It's actually it's a special lens that is as wide as a fisheye, but it doesn't have the distortion around the edges to make it fisheye. And it's actually called the Gilliam because he uses it in all of his movies. But the interesting thing is like, so he likes to shoot like at like kind of low angles or like off kilter angles with like,
Dutch. Oh my God.
Like
Don't even get me started on the Dutch angles in this movie. It's such garbage.
It's like when the doctors are all,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Enough with your artsy fartsy school freaking, look at me, I can make a Dutch angle. The whole movie's shot at a 30-degree angle. It's ridiculous.
But Gilliam, that's his style. Like he was the type of guy who kind of popularized the whole kind of authoritarian and like post-industrial like futurism.
When did Alien 3 come out?
I don't know. But so like whenever you watch a Terry Gilliam movie, you know it's a Terry Gilliam movie just because his visual style is so distinct. And the interesting thing about this movie was that in the future, it's all based around like pre-1996 technology, so it's stuff that they scavenged and kind of put together, and so it looks like very kind of low-tech, steampunky, cobbled together stuff.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And Gilliam had this obsession with it. He was like, I want everything to look like it's inside of a condom. So everyone's clothes have like one of those plastic layers on like the surface and stuff like that.
Okay, I got to get into this because he's been talking for 20 minutes. The story I felt like was a little bit predictable, but I think that might have been the point because it's all that circular, storytelling with this time travel kind of leads to the next step. And so I kind of once I figured out that's what they were going with, I knew what the story was going to be, and I just kind of lost interest. I was like, oh, okay, I already know. I know what's going to happen and because
this was your first watch, right?
Yes, first time ever seeing it. I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen because they kind of lay it out for you that this is that type of time travel movie. I'm like, okay, whatever. I hated the visual style. Like I was watching, I'm like, what the heck? Enough with the Dutch angles. Like seriously, I said it like 10 minutes in. I'm like, okay, another Dutch angle. Oh look, another Dutch angle. Oh look, another Dutch angle.
I didn't know that was a term.
Oh yeah. I don't like if you use them. It's meant to make the audience feel discombobulated.
Yeah,
and give you the perspective.
So
of
it's that uncomfortable feeling you get from the angles of the movie the whole time.
Yes, yeah.
I felt the same way.
I hated it, and I'm okay with using that in very specific moments to emphasize something.
I know you're going to go on for another 20 minutes too, but I just want to say that to me, this is another one of those Cadish movies that I'm into it 20 minutes and I'm going to turn this shit off because I don't like it. But I remembered what happened last week after I did that. And you guys, it turned into be pretty good, even though it was kind of crap. Right. And I kept going and I finished it. And I'd watched this movie. Let me rephrase it. I tried to watch this movie like 15 years ago, and I don't think I made it through.
Yeah.
I don't think I did. I don't remember really, but I can't imagine myself back then finishing this movie. And I finished it this time, and I'm kind of glad I did because I got the whole thing, and it wasn't bad by the time I finished it up. I was happy to finally gotten the whole story, but you're right. I don't dig the different angles. It's a super dark. I did appreciate Brad Pitt's performance. I thought he was really good in here.
He was good as a crazy
Bruce
person.
Willis was Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I didn't think he didn't really stand out to me very much.
And Madeline Stowe, I've never really been a big fan of hers, but
I was watching this movie and I'm like, enough, dude. We get it. You know how to hold your camera sideways. Like
I will say this. I will say if you're a movie fan, you should watch this movie. There's a lot of cool stuff in this movie, and it's very like the film student in Cadish is the guy that probably made us watch this movie.
Yeah.
For a reason,
And
it wasn't your friend.
And we're all like, oh God, another Cadish flick.
I can understand from a film perspective, I get it. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's the same thing with the Peter Jackson thing with Bad Taste. Like I get it.
I'm never forgiving you for that.
This one I did not appreciate nearly as much as Bad Taste. Like Bad Taste, I knew it was what it was. And
I could watch this a dozen times.
This one had a budget behind it, so I felt like there was no excuse for it to look so shitty.
But Terry Gilliam's just weird.
Yeah.
He's a weird dude.
But that's what makes this movie so interesting is the fact that Terry Gilliam, he is such an auteur. Like there's a famous story in the shooting of this movie where there's that scene where Bruce Willis, he had just come out from the outside. He's going through decontamination and he's like drawing blood while he's like naked. And there's this like wide shot where there's a shadow of a hamster wheel and a hamster running on the wheel, like kind of projected on the background. And there was like this shot should have taken maybe an hour to get. And Terry Gilliam was so obsessed with the shadow of the hamster because the hamster wasn't performing as he wanted it to. Like it wasn't running on the wheel. So like they kept doing take after take to try to get the hamster shadow just right.
Is that why Bruce Willis is so pissed in this movie?
And it's something that like you don't even notice when you're watching the movie. But Terry Gilliam is such a stickler for details like that, and he's such a perfectionist that they spent like an entire day on that one shot trying to get the hamster wheel.
If I was a producer or whatever of this movie, I probably would have lost my mind.
I can handle that kind of mentality from like Kubrick movies. Because Kubrick's a freaking genius, and his visual style is amazing.
Well, some would argue Gilliam's a genius.
I don't think so. Like hearing that story, if it was a Kubrick movie, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's Kubrick like doing his wacky thing, right? But it comes out like a really great product at the end of the line. when I saw that and you're telling me about this, I'm like, no, it wasn't worth it, dude.
To me, this is one of those movies that it has its good stuff in it. It's a movie more for the Matts over here.
Yeah,
the guys that can appreciate people like what's his name,
Terry Gilliam.
Terry Gilliam. It's like for me, it was too much to process. I think to be able to really appreciate it. It's not my kind of movie.
Yeah.
It's just
the other thing I really didn't like about this is it feels like other movies that I've seen that were made during this time, and maybe they were trying to mimic this movie, but it was like that late 90s grungy, everything's kind of shitty in the future vibe. Like Alien 3 had the same thing. Everybody's wearing basic rags, everything's wet.
But that's kind of that's a staple of Gilliam films is that he kind of looks at like bureaucracy as the ultimate evils of society. And in fact, he made his most influential and famous film is Brazil, and it's kind of like he originally wanted to call that movie 1984 and a half, and it's basically just like this kind of industrial kind of complex thing where all the pipes and like the architecture and stuff like that is just overbearing on like the individual. And the thing about Gilliam, which makes him such an interesting filmmaker, and it goes back to his use of wide-angle lenses, is that he captures so much information in every shot, and you really get the sense of like the environments that the characters are in, and he always makes it so that the environments are either oppressive or terrible in some way, shape, or form, and because he shoots everything in a wide angle. The sets become characters in and of themselves, and he has, he I know you don't like him, but he had such a profound influence on so many like filmmakers and the way movies are made, because he was kind of the original rebel. Like when Hollywood was doing like the 90s blockbuster mentality, Terry Gilliam was off doing like his own thing and making these like really interesting movies, and other filmmakers would watch them and be like, oh wow, maybe I should incorporate some of this into my stuff.
I feel like, everybody, there has to be that person that takes that step in order for other people to follow. So I can appreciate that, but I feel like the people who followed him probably did a better job. Like these like quasi fisheye lens, like wide open shots. I was like, it was like information overload. There's too much. There has to be a focal point for the film, otherwise I get lost.
But he specifically avoids those focal points.
It takes away from the film for me.
Well, I've heard interviews of him where he's like, I don't want people to know where to focus on the frame when they're watching my movies.
Sounds like a terrible idea.
But the interesting thing about that philosophy is that when you rewatch his films, like you spot new things every time you watch them. And like stuff that you missed the first time around, like that hamster thing I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Like when you're first watching that movie, you're not going to notice that. But like
here's the thing though with that argument. I know you find stuff every time you rewatch it. I'm not going to rewatch any of his movies.
Well, that's fine. But like 12 Monkeys, it's such a deep movie. Like I said, you can study like the time travel logic and look at all the scenes about and kind of deconstruct like, okay, like they actually caused like, the ultimate release of this virus and stuff like you can go back and piece together these puzzles and then see different things. And the thing that I thought really kind of made this movie stand out from other time travel films is the question of the unreliable narrator, is Cole really insane or is this actually happening?
Yeah.
And so like it brings into the question the mental stability of the main character as to whether or not he's imagining all this stuff or if it's actually real.
The storyline,
I love that stuff because you're watching it and it's like, is this all in his head or is it real? Like what's going on here?
I feel like if this storyline is very intriguing, and I agree with you, it's a really cool way they kind of lay out what's going to happen, and the time travel is really interesting. I just feel like the visual style and the way he shot this film with the overbearing Dutch angles and everything's like down looking up, like that for me, like
then you wouldn't like any Terry Gilliam.
It totally detracts from any good qualities that the story actually has, because I'm so preoccupied with like, dude, would you just hold your freaking camera?
Like what I want to see is I want to know how they actually time travel.
It was like They just put him in a condom.
They put him in something and they throw him down the butthole.
Ejaculated him into time.
Well, they explain it way more in the series 12 Monkeys than they do in the actual movie.
Do you want to fill them in?
Yeah, why don't you? Also, you haven't like kind of chimed in on what you think of this movie. So, did you like this movie? Are you with Kadish?
No, I do like this movie,
Okay.
but I like the series better.
Once again, the table is split. Again.
Me and Vader are like the average customers.
Yeah. It's like movie snobs over here.
I'd say below average.
Okay.
I like boobs.
I do like boobs. I do like boobs.
It's like hold your camera straight. And he's like, "Where's the tits?"
I'm sorry, there are no dinosaurs in 12 Monkeys, Alex.
There should be. They had the opportunity to go back.
Jude's trying to talk.
Sorry, Jude. Go ahead.
That's fine. I was done.
The patriarchy.
So Kadish and I watched the series back when we were first dating, and it's based on this movie. And I hadn't seen this movie in a very long time, so watching it for this, I was excited to watch it again because I loved the series so much. And going back and watching the movie that the series was based on was just a kind of cool event for me to be like, oh yeah, that's where they got that. And that's that character. And they like gender swapped her and just kind of going back and kind of retracing the steps of like the original content of this series that I really, really loved. Now I love this movie. Do I think it looks great visually? No, but I do still love the movie. I love the story. I love the time travel logic, and I love the relationships between the characters and how those evolve. The character of Dr. Rayleigh. I loved the evolution of her character, how she goes from the very disbelieving psychiatrist with like the heart, and there's something about him, and then the story of how she eventually gets on board and believes him, and then eventually falls in love with him and tries to get away with him. Yeah, and that whole scene that you keep seeing replaying throughout the movie of her rushing to some man dying and then finding out at the end of the movie that that's Cole. I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was a very full story for me.
I didn't have any problem with the story. I just don't like the visual style.
I agree with you.
Yeah. It just, to me, it detracts so much. Because the story, like Jude pointed out, it's a really solid story.
It is.
And it's a lot of fun. And I even like the actors in it. Bruce Willis, I think, could have been swapped out for pretty much anybody. I didn't really think he brought anything specific to the table, but Brad Pitt, the whole storyline.
I highly recommend the series.
Originally, Terry Gilliam wanted Jeff Bridges for the Bruce Willis role.
I can see that.
But Universal was like, he's not an A-list actor. We need someone who can put butts in the seats.
Whatever, man. No,
wasn't that about the same time Lebowski came out? It's got to be.
Didn't do well when it first came out.
Lebowski was early 2000s, I think.
Was it?
Really?
Man, I keep thinking 90. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, I think, I don't know, besides Kadish, I think we're all on board. Like, it's just like his visual style is so drastically different.
I mean, like that's Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
Like every Terry Gilliam movie
The
has
Big Lebowski was 98.
98? Okay. So it came out a year after this one? 2 years? No, 3 years. Because it was 95, right? I keep confusing the time in the movie
to the time
with when it came out.
So 12 Monkeys came out in 95. And while they were filming that is when Interview with the Vampire came out, which was 94.
But they talked about how the virus started killing people in 1997 in the movie.
Yeah.
And again, like all these movies, the future's always takes place in 97. like Escape
now,
from New
what
York.
would have been really funny is if they had made that movie last year and we're trying to get it released this year.
Like the opening credits, I was like, oh, this was okay.
there is a little bit more of a ominous.
It does, yeah. The pandemic kills 5 billion people on the earth.
Well, that's kind of the
humanity is forced to go underground.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus.
That's kind of the interesting thing about all Terry Gilliam movies is they're all kind of ahead of their time, and like when they come out, they're not very well appreciated.
Well, he takes a lot from like Orwell, right? From that Orwellian type vibe. So that kind of makes sense because I feel like we're starting to get into that time zone. We're like, yeah, that's
But I mean, he always has the worst luck with his movies. Like, I know that he was trying to make this one movie called The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, and there's a great documentary on this movie and how it failed to get made, because originally it was going to have Johnny Depp in it, and they actually started shooting the movie, and then their financing fell through, and so they only had a third of a movie shot, and the lead actor suffered a herniated disc, and he was sidelined and all this other stuff, and I believe the documentary is called The Man from La Mancha, and if you watch that, it's just like the most stressful shoot, and Terry Gilliam always suffers when he's trying to make movies. In fact, during 12 Monkeys, he was in a horse riding accident that almost killed him. And so halfway through the movie, he actually paid a documentary crew to make a documentary about the making of 12 Monkeys. It's called The Hamster Effect. And the reason that he did this was because he wanted proof of, kind of like an objective look at the making of this film, because when he was making Brazil, he had to deal with so much interference from Universal in terms of them trying to re-edit the movie and stuff like that. And the only reason he agreed to do 12 Monkeys was if he got final cut of the movie, which he did.
I mean, they didn't just have Joss Whedon come in and finish it.
Exactly. So, it's Terry Gilliam has this kind of history of having really cool documentaries made about the making of his movies, but they always showcase how torturous of a process working with him is, or working on his movies are. And it's very sad. But getting back to what Jude said, the TV show version of 12 Monkeys, the adaptation that Sci-Fi did, the Sci-Fi Network, is excellent. It's one of the best time travel stories I've ever seen. Because
is it directed by?
No, it has nothing to do with Gilliam.
You might be able to watch it.
Yeah, I might be able to watch it then.
But they take certain characters from the movie and kind of expand upon them. Cole's relationship with Jose, his cellmate, is really Jose becomes a completely
it's very more fleshed out.
I'd like to go back and watch this movie just to kind of figure out what his storyline is, because I was so distracted by all the bullshit on the screen that I had a hard time following what was going on sometimes, and seeing him show up in World War I at one point, I was thrown off. I'm like, whoa, that's it's interesting. I want to learn more about it.
I did how the time travel technology was not very accurate.
So this kind of science is not an exact science.
6 years early.
We're going to send you back to 96 on the dot. And they send him back to World War II.
And that's something that gets carried over into the TV show. Yeah. And the Goins character that Brad Pitt plays in the movie, he's gender swapped in the TV show.
Her name's Jennifer Goins.
Jennifer Goins. Is it? I thought it was Joanna.
No, it's Jennifer.
Okay, well.
It doesn't matter.
But it was kind of funny because when we were rewatching this movie, I turned to Jude and I was like, isn't it weird how the actress that they got for the TV show, you could tell she studied Brad Pitt and incorporated a lot of his performance into her performance, because there were gestures and facial expressions that she stole right from Pitt.
There was a lot of his crazy in her performance.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
but she eventually made it her own.
Yeah.
And even the character of Jones, who's the astrophysicist, who at the end she's on the airplane with the guy who's going to release the virus, she becomes a very central character in the TV show. And there's just a bunch of stuff in the TV show that's really good. And I'd say that overall, the time travel in the TV show is some of the best use of time travel I've ever seen in anything. Even though there's certain things that they take some liberties with that I didn't quite like, but for the most part, it's flawless time travel logic.
And they explain it way more, get way more into detail of how it's accomplished in the TV show.
Yeah, but it's so complicated in the TV show that the fact that they're able to consistently pull it off is just, it's a testament to how well written the show is.
It's really good.
I'll have to check it out. Real quick, final thoughts on 12 Monkeys. Vader, what do you got for us? What's your...
Visually, it gives me a headache, but the story-wise, I thought it was pretty good.
Right on. Jude, how about you?
I mean, I pretty much agree. I would watch it again and again. I like it.
Okay.
I give it 1.5 thumbs up.
1.5?
Yeah.
That's weird. Okay.
3/4 of a thumb.
Yeah, it's like Freud's corn dog.
Okay. All right. I did not.
That's
did
a
not
T-shirt.
Like
Freud's corn dog.
I think I can make that happen. Yeah, I didn't like this movie very much at all. I can appreciate the time travel usage and the story itself. I feel like it could have been done better. If they would have stuck with the script and just had somebody else film it, I think it could have been 10 to 10, or what does that say?
10 out of 10?
10 out of 10. Thank you. But like with Gillian's style and it took me out of the movie so bad. I couldn't pay attention to it.
Now, you said that you didn't like any of the movies this week.
I may have exaggerated a little bit. It was because I tweeted that while I was watching 12 Monkeys and I was just in a bad mood.
Well, let me ask you, because this was your theme, you chose time travel.
Yeah.
And it's our job to torture whoever chooses the theme. Of
Yeah,
the
we
week.
need to discuss
What
that.
movie did you
Yeah,
wish
what
we had
movie,
picked?
like when you chose the time travel theme, like what were you hoping to
Get
get out of it?
When I chose the topic, I had just got done watching the Back to the Future trilogy, and I was on like a time travel high. And I'm like, man, there's got to be some other cool time travel movies out there. And I'm like, I did enjoy Bill and Ted. Like I said, from the beginning of it, I was kind of like, all right, this is kind of like a dumb 80s like whatever movie. But then at the end, it kind of redeemed itself. So I kind of enjoyed it more by the ending. And what was the other one? Hot Tub Time Machine. Again, comedy's real subjective with me, but because it's a John Cusack movie, I give it like an extra star just because of that.
Okay.
But it's definitely not something that I would like, oh, I got to go watch Hot Tub Time Machine again. So I was like, I don't love these movies. But
Wait, so had you seen any of these movies before?
I have seen Hot Tub Time Machine
Okay.
when it first came out. I think I may have rented it after it hit shelves or whatever. But Bill and Ted, I saw the sequel. I've never seen the first one. So this is my first time watching the first one. And then 12 Monkeys.
You got to start watching movies in order, man.
I know. And then 12 Monkeys, I've always heard people talk about it. Like, oh, 12 Monkeys is a great movie. And I've never...
I love it. I love it when the tables split, dude.
It's not.
I really do.
It's so not, dude. Like,
The show's so much more fun when the tables
Yeah.
50-50.
It's more fun
Again,
when we don't all agree.
we've
but
said it
also,
like,
I don't need
your
to
taste
listen
in
to
movies
you
is
guys fight
trash.
for 3 hours.
But anyway, I don't know. These aren't my favorite movies. I wish everything could be as good as Back to the Future.
I wish you guys could have picked better movies.
That seems to be a going theme.
Yeah, at least they didn't chopping mall you. Okay,
I stand by my choice.
such a bullshit movie.
I saw.
And Bad Taste.
Bad
I got
Taste.
double posed.
Yeah, you did.
I think I earned another week of theme.
We'll give you the first
Yeah.
pick for August after Jude's done with her birthday picks.